Week number 10 of the 2025 fantasy football season kicked off with an absolute banger on Thursday Night Football between the Raiders and the Broncos. We couldn't even keep up with all the scoring that was going on the field. More than likely, in today's video, I'm going to be helping you guys right yourself from the wrongs that we have made on Thursday Night Football. That was a dreadful game where I bet at least half of you guys fell asleep at halftime due to how boring that game was. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down my top 40 wide receiver rankings and tiers for week number 10 of the 2025 fantasy football season. Before we can get on into things though, I would like to ask that if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with my must-start wide receiver ones: Jackson Smith-Njigba, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drizzy Drake London, Devontae Adams, Emeka Egbuka, Justin Jefferson, Jaylen Waddle, Rome Odunze, Michael Pittman Jr., as well as Ladd McConkey. Now, JSN is just penciled in as a top 3 option every single week. It doesn't matter about the matchup at all. He could be going up against the worst matchup for wide receivers, the best matchup for wide receivers, and I'm still going to bang the drum heavily for him. This week, up against the Arizona Cardinals, is the 19th best matchup for wide receivers on a per-game basis. Now, last time these two teams played was actually JSN's worst game of the season, but we are just going to brush that under the rug. This is a guy that could see 13 plus targets in any given game, and I would not be surprised at all. He has 4 straight games as a top 7 wide receiver. 2 of those 4 games, he was the wide receiver number 3. So my expectations are sky high for JSN this week. Now we move to Puka Nacua, going up against the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. Both Puka and JSN are on the same level for me. You basically just close your eyes and rank them as top 3 wide receivers, regardless of the matchup. This week, facing up off against the San Francisco 49ers is the 11th best matchup for wide receivers on a per game basis. Every single game that Puka Nacua has played, where he played the whole game, he was a top 6 wide receiver. The only game where he ended up stumbling was as the wide receiver 69. Very nice. I like, up against the Ravens in Baltimore in a game in which he got hurt. So this week, as a healthy wide receiver up against the 49ers, and the guy got hurt last week. He didn't play the whole game, and he was the wide receiver number 5. As of right now, he practiced in full on Thursday. I expect him to be good to go in this game, and I expect huge numbers out of him. At number 3, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown going up against the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders over in Washington, the 5th best matchup for wide receivers on a per game basis. Amon-Ra St. Brown is another one of these guys that we just trust very heavily weekly. I understand that he may not be as consistent at a super high level as JSN and Puka Nacua, but this is a guy that you just pencil in as a top 12 wide receiver, and he's just going to keep producing for you. We've seen games where the Lions don't look so hot, like last week up against the Minnesota Vikings. They end up taking an embarrassing loss, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is still the wide receiver number 11, another guy that's live to have just 15 plus targets, and no one would be shocked. So I love Amon-Ra. Then we move to Drizzy Drake London going up against the Indianapolis Colts. The game is technically at Indianapolis, but this game is in Germany. The 9th best matchup for wide receivers on a per game basis. We just saw Drake London absolutely put the New England Patriots in a body bag. 9 receptions on 14 targets for 118 yards, and not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns. He finished as the wide receiver 1 in that game. He was the wide receiver 1 in just a few weeks ago in week number 6 up against the Buffalo Bills. 2 games ago for him, as he missed week number 8 up against the Dolphins. He had 10 plus targets in now 4 straight games. Going up against the Colts, life is but a dream for Drizzy Drake London. Then we got Devontae Adams going up against the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. Puka Nacua will be good to go, which does kind of put a bit of a damper on Devontae Adams, but even still, you're just going to rank him so highly. The man has scored 5 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. If you go one-on-one with Devontae Adams in the Thunderdome, you are just guaranteed to get put on a t-shirt. I mean, Devontae Adams, the fact that there are just one-on-one matchups in the red zone up against Devontae Adams is hilarious. He wins those every single time, and Matthew Stafford is locking into him inside of the red zone. I understand that Puka didn't play up against the Jacksonville Jaguars when he scored 3 touchdowns. Puka missed like half the game up against the Saints where he scored 2 touchdowns, but Devontae Adams is going to be fed the rock heavily inside of the red zone. This is a good matchup up against the 49ers. Like I said, the 11th best matchup on a per game basis. Again, all of these guys, You know why you're playing him. You already love him. Then you move to Emeka Egbuka going up against the New England Patriots. Now, Emeka Egbuka has been on a bit of a downward slide over the last 3 games. Now, the prior 2 games, prior to the bye, we see him kind of force his way back from injury, and Baker Mayfield just looks like a 2-pack of ass. Baker missing guys that are wide open, sailing throws, underthrowing things, just stuff that we did not come accustomed to for Baker Mayfield the first 5 games of the season. Emeka Egbuka also did force himself back from injury, so now another week removed from that with the bye week, I just feel like we are going to see a more healthy version of him, thus a version of him like we saw earlier on the season where he was on top of the world, the 15th best matchup for wide receivers on a per game basis. Again, I'm not pulling the plug and abandoning ship on Emeka Egbuka after a few downward spiral games. Then we got Justin Jefferson going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens defense is a lot better than what it does say on paper. This is the 6th best matchup on paper. I don't think that life is but a dream here for Justin Jefferson up against the Ravens, but Justin Jefferson's just a guy you have to rank inside the top 12. I understand that JJ McCarthy isn't necessarily the best quarterback alive out there. I know he has an alter ego where he calls himself 9. It's like some fucking fake aura, but I don't know. If he keeps winning games, then maybe I'll give him some credit. I'll start calling him 9, you know? But in my opinion, right now, it's some fake demon shit going on over there with him and the Vikings. Now, the Vikings do beat the Detroit Lions. Justin Jefferson, 6 of 9 for 47 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver 18. This has been a disaster of a season for Justin Jefferson. Not so much of a disaster to where you can't sleep at night because you drafted Justin Jefferson, but so much of a disaster as to where, hey, Justin Jefferson isn't a guy that you feel super good about every week. Now, you're always going to rank him inside the top 12 because, in my opinion, he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And in any given matchup, if he scored 3 touchdowns this week, you would not be surprised at all, but he has just 2 touchdowns on the season. 2 of those, though, were with JJ McCarthy, so good matchup up against the Ravens, even if I feel that the matchup's a little bit hyperinflated. I definitely want Justin Jefferson in my lineup. I mean, we were playing Justin Jefferson when Carson Wentz was looking terrible, so we're just going to keep rolling him out. Now we move to Jaylen Waddle away, Waddle, Waddle. Jaylen Waddle away, Waddle, Waddle. Till the very next day, bum, 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 bada, bum, going up against the Buffalo Bills. Now, Jaylen Waddle is notorious for playing well up against the Buffalo Bills. We have that game from a couple of years ago where Tua gets the concussion. He somehow passes the eye test, and he comes back out there, throws a laser. He's got Waddle deep down the field. Probably my favorite game for the Dolphins over the years. That's the last time the Dolphins beat the Buffalo Bills because we are a complete and utter fucking joke. I think we are going to get butt fucked in this game. I don't think that the Buffalo Bills are going to show any mercy either. This is going to be a murder live on television, fucking Law and Order style, but going up against the Buffalo Bills has been a positive matchup for Jaylen Waddle in the past. Earlier on in the season, he was the wide receiver 22. That was with Tyreek Hill. Ever since Tyreek Hill suffered that injury up against the Jets, he's been the wide receiver 8, 17, 90, 5, and 25. I understand. Oh, the wide receiver 90, that was the monsoon game up against the Browns. You just brush that one under the rug. Jaylen Waddle's got to be in your lineup. Then we move to Rome Odunze going up against the Giants. Another scenario where you kind of want to just forget what happened last week up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Wet dream matchup on paper. I'm giving Rome Odunze the Suka Lamink. I'm massaging the guy's nuts like it's a fushigi. Metaphorically, of course, everyone around the fantasy space is just sucking this guy off, right? And he scores 0 fucking fantasy points up against the Cincinnati Bengals. But we have a matchup on paper here that's the 7th best for wide receivers. He was the wide receiver 8 just 2 weeks ago up against the Ravens, so we're just going to forget about what happened last week. Then we move to Michael Pittman Jr. going up against the Atlanta Falcons over in Germany. This game is in Berlin. Next week, the Dolphins travel to no, I thought that game's not in Berlin. It's in Spain. Going like Hilaria Baldwin going up against the Washington Commanders. What a fun time that is going to be. Now, the Falcons, rough matchup on paper, but Michael Pittman Jr. doesn't give a shit about the paper. He has been a top 22 wide receiver every single week outside of 2. He has been very boom or bust, but the booms are ferocious. Wide receiver 9 last week, wide receiver 3 the week prior. So again, I get the matchup is definitely a little bit bad. It's definitely bad on paper, but You just got to keep rocking with Michael Pittman, especially since I feel like Daniel Jones will just play much better this game. Then we got Ladd McConkey going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, after Ladd McConkey was really starting to feel like a nice, reliable piece on your team, it's like, okay, we got a nice, reliable top 20 wide receiver over the prior 4 games. Maybe he won't be a reliable top 16 type of guy, but hey, he's going to keep putting up top 20 numbers. Last week against the Titans, he scores just 10 fantasy points as the wide receiver 37. This week, he has a strong rebound matchup here, the 4th best matchup for wide receivers. Without Joe Alt, it seems like Ladd McConkey is just much more involved in the offense, much more prone to get like 10 plus targets as he saw the prior 2 games prior to last week. So I'm still big in on Ladd McConkey. I'm not going to worry at all. Now we move into tier number 2, the high-end wide receiver 2s. These are also guys that you just need to have in your lineup. Garrett Wilson, Nico Collins, A.J. Brown, as well as Devontae Smith. Garrett Wilson was limited with the knee on Thursday, something to follow. The injury report today on Friday. If he does end up playing, you are going to play him. I don't really care what the matchup is. The Cleveland Browns are the 13th best matchup for wide receivers. I get, Nick, Justin Fields isn't very good. I know, but Justin Fields hasn't been good all year long, and we've seen Garrett Wilson be a reliable top 12, top 18-ish wide receiver. If you wanted to put him inside of tier number 1, I would not judge you. Again, despite the ups and downs of the Jets as a whole, Garrett Wilson has stayed very stable. He's missed the last 2 games. Obviously, the bye was last week, so my expectation would be that he is in, but you obviously want to see the practice report today. And we got Nico Collins going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Duval at home in Houston. No CJ Stroud, which means Giraffe Neck Davis Money Mills is under center. That is obviously a big negative, right? I get we can make fun of CJ Stroud all we want. CJ Stroud's not having a great season. I get it. But CJ Stroud is light years, shout out to Buzz, ahead of Davis Mills. This is the 12th best matchup for wide receivers. Nico Collins has been all over the place, but he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He continues to get open. It's just the offensive line completely crumbles game in and game out and fails Nico Collins because guess what? If the offensive line can't block, even if Nico Collins is wide open, there isn't a guy within a area code of the man. If you can't throw the ball because you're getting plowed by 7 different dudes behind the offensive line, then Nico Collins is not going to be the most successful. Then we move to A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau. Seen practicing on Thursday with the hamstring injury. Missed the game prior to the bye up against the Giants. Now 2 weeks removed from the hamstring injury. I think he should play. Again, something to monitor, though, because if A.J. Brown was to be out, which I don't think he will be, then you would move Devontae Smith into the top 12 range. Going up against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau is obviously going to be a tougher matchup just in terms of the environment, but the Carolina Panthers didn't seem so fazed by that last week as Rico Dowdle hit them from the back. How you like that? The 18th best matchup for wide receivers on a per-game basis. A.J. Brown has been the definition of inconsistency. His finishes bounce all over. Pause. Wide receiver 101. Shout out to Zoe. Wide receiver 67, 4, 92, 48, 19, and 4. His last 2 games inside of the top 20. So again, while I'm not the most trustworthy guy of A.J. Brown, and while on paper this game may not be the most high scoring, I still want A.J. Brown in my lineup. Same thing is the case with Devontae Smith, though Devontae Smith does appear to be slightly more consistent than A.J. Brown, but it's hard not to be more consistent than A.J. Brown. Again, the matchup on paper, mid-range. I don't expect this to be a shootout, but I do think it has the ability to become a higher scoring game on Monday night. Wide receiver 20 prior to the bye, wide receiver 2 the week prior to that. Again, shit on Jalen Hurts all you want, but when these guys hit, they hit it out of the park. Now we move into tier number 3, which are going to be my mid-range wide receiver 2s, Zay Flowers, Deebo Samuel, Chris Olave in tier number 3. But before we break down tier 3 here, my mid-range wide receiver 2s, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you will get a free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you'll get an additional $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. How does the pick'em work? It's incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks on the higher or the lower. If those picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher, but obviously all of the picks need to hit. Make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, Zay Flowers has been kind of flopping around like a fish out of water, but Lamar Jackson coming back completely revives a guy like Zay Flowers, a guy that you simply just did not trust with Cooper Rush, with Tyler Snoop Huntley, that now just has some new life breathed into him, I guess would be, the correct saying. The 24th best matchup for wide receivers. Maybe this could be a higher scoring game. I don't know if it will be, but it could if JJ McCarthy, number 9, the demon, locks in. Timo Jackson Dart himself. I know Zay Flowers didn't perform the best last week up against the Dolphins as the wide receiver 32, but at least with Lamar Jackson, you feel like a safe floor of, hey, he's at least going to be like a top 30 wide receiver. So on upside alone, he should be ranked typically as like a mid-range to low-end wide receiver number 2. Then we got Deebo Samuel going up against the Detroit Lions. Now, no, Jaden Daniels sucks. Marcus Mariota, pretty mid, but you will think that they're going to be getting a healthy dosage of getting scored on in this game. They are going to be down, thus they are going to have to throw the ball. This is the 8th best matchup for wide receivers, so Deebo should be getting a lot of targets. Based upon the matchup being good and based upon them playing from behind, you would just think Deebo should have a good enough game to finish here. I understand that he's been not so hot over the last 3 games, but if you remember early on in the season, wide receiver 6, 17, 11, 7, over a 5-game stretch. In the middle right there is the wide receiver 71, but Deebo has proven to us that he can play well. No Terry McLaurin. You're just going to see a lot of Deebo Samuel here. Then we got Chris Olave going up against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. His target share took a giant hit to the chest last week, just 4 targets. First time this season with under 6 targets. Most games, the guy's getting 10 plus targets. And obviously, if you just have 4 targets, 3 receptions for 57 yards, you are not going to have a great showing. Though, that was a game where the offense just could not maneuver well at all, regardless of who they gave the rock to. The LA Rams defense completely overwhelmed Tyler Shuck. And I still think Tyler Shuck is on like a similar level to Spencer Rattler. It's not like a crazy downgrade. Not an upgrade really either, though. Up against the Carolina Panthers, this is the 28th best matchup for wide receivers, but on volume alone, I think he should be successful. Now we move to tier number 4, which is going to be the low-end wide receiver 2s with Wan'Dale Robinson, Stephon Diggs, Maserati Marv, DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Tedero McMillan. Wan'Dale Robinson has a finger-licking good matchup up against the Chicago Bears this week, the 3rd best matchup for wide receivers on a per-game basis. Wan'Dale Robinson had 11 targets last week up against the 49ers, 9 of 11 for 46 yards as the wide receiver number 28. So while Wan'Dale Robinson is the guy that you will, the first guy that comes to your mind when you think of big play wide receiver, big upside wide receiver, if there ever was a game for him to rekindle the magic like he had up against the Eagles in week 6 as the wide receiver 9, or as the wide receiver 5 in week number 2 with Mr. Unlimited under center up against the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's World, it would be this week up against the Bears. Then we got Stephon Diggs. No Kayshon Boutte this week, more than likely. No Boutte, no fucking problem for Stephon Diggs, who should now slot in as the clear wide receiver 1. I mean, he was always the clear wide receiver 1 on paper, but, football is played on the field, not on the paper. ECR expert consensus rankings have him as the wide receiver 15. I get being incredibly bullish on Stephon Diggs this week, but I still know deep down it could be Demario Douglas. It could be some other random wide receiver that you've never even heard of getting 1 million targets, and Stephon Diggs is just chilling in the corner watching all this happen. They continue to kind of restrict Stephon Diggs from truly getting the amount of snaps that I believe he deserves. He's a guy that just gets around 50 to 60-ish% of the snaps when he should be playing like 70 or 80%. Maybe this is the week they finally flip the script with Kayshon Boutte getting hurt, but we shall see. I wouldn't bet my life on that. In terms of a matchup up against the Bucs, the 21st best matchup for wide receivers on a per game basis. So I definitely feel the best about Stephon Diggs since, he was on that streak of week 4 and week 5 where he was playing really well. This is the best game to be on Stephon Diggs, but but I still am not 100% confident. Then we got Marvin Harrison Jr. going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, the 25th best matchup for wide receivers. The hope is that Jacoby Brissett has saved Marvin Harrison Jr. The bad man, Kyler Murray, is gone just in time for Kyler Murray to start grinding Call of Duty on stream. Wide receiver 6 last week, 7 of 10 for 96 yards and a touchdown. Now, that was up against the Dallas Cowboys, so it's hard to really hyperinflate a guy after one great game up against the Dallas Cowboys defense that couldn't stop me out there. So I definitely don't think we need to be given the Gawk Gawk 9000 special to Marvin Harrison Jr., especially in a matchup that on paper is bad. But Jacoby Brissett does operate this offense at a higher level, so Marvin Harrison Jr. should be better. But I will note, 3 games played with Jacoby Brissett, wide receiver 6, 47, and 63. So don't just hop on the high horse just yet on Maserati Marv. Then we got DK Metcalf going up against the LA Superchargers in LA. This is a brutal matchup, the 29th best matchup for wide receivers. Last week, DK Metcalf was on the struggle bus. He scored 3 fantasy points as the wide receiver 78. Prior to that, though, he was a guy that was a reliable top 32 wide receiver. He wasn't necessarily a guy that you felt the best about, but you already know DK Metcalf has the ability, he has the skill set, he has the speed, and speed kills in the National Football League, so he has the upside of scoring 30-plus points. Now, I know he hasn't done that yet this season, but he has multiple games with over 20 fantasy points, and he has a touchdown in 5 of 8 games, so I feel like last week, more of just a fluke of him being so bad. He normally scores at least like 12-plus points. So I feel the bounce back is kind of just inevitable here. Then we move to Keenan Allen going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers defense on paper is going to be the 4th best matchup for wide receivers. The problem with Keenan Allen is he's just so all over the place, right? He has very high highs, right, where he's scoring 20-plus points. There was a game up against the Colts where he scored 29 fantasy points as the wide receiver 3. But then the lows are incredibly low, right? It's not just like a safe floor of 10 fantasy points. No, he's scoring 6 points, 7 points, 8 points, right? So the upside is obviously going to be there. Them losing Joe Alt obviously sucks. It definitely decreases the value of a whole as the offense here for the Chargers. Justin Herbert, the pervert, has been playing very well, though. This is a good matchup on paper. It's hard to sit Keenan Allen even with the flaws. Then we got Wiki DJ Moore going up against the New York Football Giants. In terms of his health, hip and groin injury back at practice on Thursday, my assumption would be that he would play. DJ Moore put on a fucking clinic last week up against the Cincinnati Bengals. The man threw a touchdown to Caleb Williams, 4 of 6 for 72 yards, and 1 rush for 17 yards with 2 total touchdowns as the wide receiver 4. Great performance out of Mr. DJ Moore in that game. Having a game where you throw a touchdown and rush in a touchdown as a wide receiver and you don't actually catch one is just fucking hilarious, in my opinion. Now, DJ Moore has not been the poster boy for consistency, but recently he's starting to pick things up. Even when Rome had a great game up against the Baltimore Ravens, he was still able to score 12 fantasy points, which was the 3rd best game of the season. So while I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I 100% trust DJ Moore, this is the 7th best matchup for wide receivers. He should at least have a decent floor in this game. Now we move to Tetairoa McMillan going up against the New Orleans Saints. Now, if I could truly trust Bryce Young, we'd be talking about Tetairoa McMillan as like a top 18, potentially even a top 12 start, right? If Bryce Young was playing how he played down the stretch of last season, we would be oogling and ogling over Tetairoa McMillan. But instead, we get the Bryce Young of this season, who has been not really that good at all. He's had like 2 okay games. The rest not so hot. So Tetairoa McMillan is kind of just at the mercy of Bryce Young, which does really suck. This is the 14th best matchup. So I expect Tetairoa to be in the top 28-ish range, so he feels fine here. And you know the upside is big because he's had big games this season. But ultimately, again, with just how Bryce Young is playing, I don't think you can truly talk him up much higher than this. Now we move into tier number 5, which is going to be the high-end wide receiver 3s with I Want a Bad Bitch, Jordan Addison Ray, Romeo Doubs, Tez Johnson, Quentin Johnston, as well as Khalil Shakira. Now, Jordan Addison did not play well at all with Timu Jackson Dart last week. JJ McCarthy, 2 receptions on 4 targets for 48 yards, 1 rush for 16 yards, the wide receiver 47. Prior to that, wide receiver 31, 12, 19, and 21 with Carson Wentz. So the red alarm is sounding slightly with JJ McCarthy. The thing that's pulling me up here is the matchup up against the Ravens being the 6th best matchup for wide receivers. So while there are definitely some flaws that you can see with JJ McCarthy, the matchup's too juicy for me to rank him any lower. Then we got Romeo Doubs, the Guardian Cap man himself, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Romeo Doubs, the wide receiver 1 on this team. He had 10 targets last week, 7 receptions for 91 yards in a big fat L to Tedero McMillan and the Carolina Panthers. Going up against the Philadelphia Eagles defense is the 20th best matchup for wide receivers on a per game basis. So fine for Romeo Doubs. I get Christian Watson's going to keep getting pushed up this offense. I get losing Tucker Kraft. Maybe we get some more touchdown upside for Romeo Doubs, who has just 4 this season, and 3 of which of those came in 1 game up against the Dallas Cowboys. So while Romeo Doubs doesn't really feel like the biggest upside swing in your lineup weekly, he's just a safe bet to finish in this range. Then we got Tez Johnson going up against the New England Patriots. Until Chris Godwin or Mike Evans return, Tez Johnson is a guy that you want in your lineup in this range. I'm not going to fully, go balls to the wall and say, oh, you need him as like a top 24 wide receiver. Can he finish there? Yes. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. Now, going up against the Patriots, I would have thought this would have been a tougher matchup just based on how you would perceive the Patriots defense, but it is the 15th best matchup for wide receivers. Tez Johnson is live to score a touchdown. His targets over the last 2 games, 6 and 9. Now, as long as Baker just plays better, again, because Baker's been playing bad recently. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat how Baker's been playing. He has not been playing good. If he just plays okay, then I think Tez Johnson has the upside to finish highly. So, again, he just makes sense in this range. Then we got Quentin Johnston. Now, I think most weeks what you are going to see out of the Chargers offense is 2 of 3 of the guys are good. One of them probably finishes as like a top 18 guy. The other guy is probably closer to the top 24. And then the other one probably goes bust. And last week, Quentin Johnston was the wide receiver 23. 1 touchdown, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 53 yards. He gets the Steelers matchup, which is very good. Again, losing Joe Alt sucks. Earlier on in the season, when the offensive line was intact, Quentin Johnston was feasting. He's eating like Ezekiel Elliott at Thanksgiving dinner. Then the old line starts to crumble. It stumbles. It bumbles. And then Quentin Johnston's value deflates. So right now, do I feel the best about QJ? No. He had that game with 0 targets just 2 weeks ago, but I don't think that's very likely going forward. Again, hard to sit these guys when you can make up in your head, oh, it's such a great matchup, and you can just think in your head, wow, what if the Chargers just fucking unload the clip and score 5 touchdowns? It's possible. Then we got Khalil Shakir. Now, Khalil Shakir might be the least sexy play in all of fantasy football. Khalil Shakir is basically just throwing 10 to 13 or 14 points in your lineup. The odds that he actually pops off, drops his hammer down like his name is Thor, and finishes as like the, 25 plus fantasy points, a top 10 wide receiver seems low. Now, we've seen him do it just 2 weeks ago up against the Panthers as the wide receiver 7, but that is not the most likely scenario, okay? It just simply isn't. But up against the Dolphins, anything is possible. Now we move to tier number 6, which is going to be the low-end wide receiver 3s, Parker Washington, Alec Pierce, and Josh Downs. Parker Washington this week, if it was a better matchup, I'd be sitting on here banging the drum for him. The 30th best matchup for wide receivers. Likely no BTJ. I'd be shocked if he played. Parker Washington should be the wide receiver 1 in the slot. He should be working out the slot, getting a lot of targets, so he's the wide receiver 1. Jacoby Brissett's playing wide receiver when he's the quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. We're talking about Jacoby Myers is going to be on the boundary, so Parker Washington should be getting a lot of looks. On looks alone, he should be fine. but I can't truly rank him higher than this just because of the matchup. Back-to-back games, the top 31 wide receiver, no Travis Hunter. We're going to be seeing a lot of Parker Washingbeard in this game. Then we got Alec Pierce and Josh Downs. Now, these guys are kind of two peas in a pod as they're on the exact same team. Now, going up against the Falcons is a bad matchup, the 26th best matchup for wide receivers. This game is also overseas in Germany, which scares me even more. Talk about this all the time on the channel. Anytime a game goes overseas, I start to panic. Some games that you might think would be fun in the US and they end up being bad because, the field surface isn't as good and just things go a little bit weird. Their clocks are off mentally, right? It's just a weird scenario to be in, which is why it is so shocking that there are so many international games every single year. Nick, why do you not want to expand the game to other countries? I don't care. Go ahead and play the games every once in a while. Maybe start off the year there. Have a couple of games across a couple of different countries in week 1. That's fine with me. But when you have all these games across the world where these teams are traveling all at different times, we haven't gotten this down to a science of when you're supposed to leave. Some teams will leave literally on Monday. Other teams will show up there on Thursday or Friday. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And the games feel weird a lot of the times in these scenarios. Now, maybe this is a fucking shootout, a rootin' tootin' shootout back and forth, old school Western. I think that's possible, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm not at least a little bit nervous about any time these teams go to Europa. Now, Alec Pierce has been good. Alec Pierce plays more snaps than Josh Downs, so that's why I trust him more. I think Josh Downs and Alec Pierce, you put them together 1-on-1, one-on-one, mano-y-mano, who's the better wide receiver? I would bang the drum heavily for Josh Downs, but the team just doesn't give Josh Downs the same amount of snaps as Alec Pierce, so I trust Alec Pierce a little bit more. He has not scored a touchdown this season based on the amount of usage he gets, though I think he's live to eventually do that. For Josh Downs, this is a guy that scored a touchdown in 3 straight games, but his targets bounce around much more than Alec Pierce is. Last week, wide receiver 21, 6 of 9 for 57 yards and a touchdown. If you want to rank Josh Downs ahead of Alec Pierce, go ahead. I just don't trust Josh Downs as much because he just doesn't play as much on the field. Then we got tier number 7, the final tier here, the wide receiver foes, the YOLO type of tier here. Juwan Jennings, Jameson Williams, the Mario Douglas, Darius Slayton, and Amshathid, Rashid Shaheed. Juwan Jennings is on paper, in my opinion, the wide receiver number 1 on this team, the number 1 wide receiver in all of San Francisco. Going up against the LA Rams. Now, being the wide receiver 1 in the San Francisco 49ers doesn't necessarily mean you are going to be getting a boatload of targets, as they have George Kittle Timbers, they have Christian McCaffrey, and this is the 17th best matchup for wide receivers. Last time these two teams played, Juwan Jennings was not even playing. Back-to-back weeks with 9+ fantasy points feels more like you're just going to get 10 to 14 points here and, you just accept it. That, to me, is what this feels like. Then we got Jameson Williams. Now, Jameson Williams is either going to score up against the Commanders, I'm not even kidding, 2 fantasy points, or he is going to score 25, right? That is really the range of outcomes for Jameson Williams. He's either all in, balls to the wall, or he's an absolute disaster. Now, my thoughts on Jameson Williams is, yes, this is a great matchup up against the Commanders. It's the 5th best matchup for wide receivers. So a lot of people are going to rank Jameson Williams much higher than this. The expert consensus rankings have him as wide receiver 30. He is my wide receiver number 37. And the reason why people like him is because the matchup is so good. But think about how this game is going to play out, right? And think about how the perfect game for Jameson Williams works. The perfect game for Jameson Williams is the Detroit Lions are either playing from behind or they're in a game that is back and forth. A game where Jared Goff has to take those opportunities deep down the field to say, fuck it, Jameson Williams out there somewhere, and heave a rocket, NASA style, deep down the field. In a game where I expect the Detroit Lions to be up big, to be laying the haymakers down, for it to be over in the second half of the game, and they're just running the rock a ton, that does not, to me, look like the kind of game script when you're painting the picture of a Jameson Williams game. Now maybe, without Jaden Daniels, Marcus Mariota pulls a rabbit out the hat, pulls a watch out the hat, like that meme of the rabbit holding the watch, and maybe things go well for JMO. So I'm not going to always count him out, and I get why people are trying to play him because the matchup and the upside is so high, but at the end of the day, for me, I'm not really in on JMO this week. Then we got Demario Douglas going up against the Buccaneers. His brother, DeLuigi, is going to be a sit for me. Sorry, it's been 30 minutes into the video, and you start trying to, say some things that just, after you are talking for a while, not all of you guys make videos, not all of you guys speak all the time, but when you're talking, most of you guys don't, obviously, but when you speak all the time, like especially when I make as many videos that I do, I make like 10 plus videos a week, plus the live streams, you kind of just go crazy. You just start saying random shit just to fill in time, Mario Douglas, wide receiver 10 last week. No Kayshon Boutte. He pencils in as the wide receiver number 2. I'm not going to act like he's safe. He's far from safe. He could just as easily get 2 targets this week, but I just like the upside up against the Bucs. Then we got Darius Slayton going up against the Bears. It's all about the matchup. It's all about the family, and it's all about the boom. Darius Slayton, strictly an upside play. The floor is lava. The guy has feet for hands, but if he catches a big one up against the Bears, could have a huge game. Then we got Rashid Shaheed, recently traded from the New Orleans Saints to the Seahawks. Sad for Torrey Horton enjoyers, because Torrey Horton, here's a who, is now finito for the rest of this season with Rashid Shaheed there. Big play type of guy. Also a pretty safe floor type of play in New Orleans. Hopefully that translates to Seattle up against the Cardinals. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. Like, it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Thank you guys so much. Check out all the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you long time, as always. Good boy.